Strong signs, strongly seen. My name is Daniel Vallis and welcome to our channel. I hope you've been able to go outside and look up, see what the heavens are declaring at this time. It truly is amazing. We've had wonderful clear skies here the past few weeks. An excellent opportunity to go out and photograph and just look up and be reminded of the celestial journey that the Lord has brought us on, and also see the prophetic promises for the days where we are right now declared in the heavens, reminding us of his promises to his bride, but also reminding us of the promises prophetically for the days ahead as well. So much telling us that time is very short. Now if you go outside about an hour after sunset, look toward the south, a little bit to the west, this is what you will see. And we're seeing multiple pictures come together here. Reminders of Jupiter, the king planet, but also his adversaries, and how he is about to make his enemies his footstool. Now when you do go outside and look up, you will see Jupiter. That's the bright shining star right now. And a little bit below it, you will see Antares, the reddish star, which is the heart of the Scorpion. And you'll see a little curlicue of stars right below Jupiter, and that is pretty close to the Scorpion down there. Now if you look above Jupiter, you'll see two distinct stars, and those are the hips of Ophiuchus. And so that gives you a good reference when you do look up. Now on the left of Jupiter, you'll see another distinct star, and you can make an imaginary line down to that, and that star is approximately the right heel of Ophiuchus, and his foot stars are a little bit on the right of that. Now if you look at the other hip star of Ophiuchus and then draw a mental line down to Antares, the left leg stars and area are on the left of that imaginary line. So this gives you a pretty good reference when you do go outside and look up, give you an idea of where Jupiter is, how it's changing position, where it is in relation to the Scorpion, and also Ophiuchus, the one who's treading on the Scorpion. Now if we go into Stellarium, this shows what you will see from Jerusalem on the 3rd of October. The moon will be drawing close to Jupiter, but you can see that curlicue of stars for Scorpius right below it, and then the two reference stars of Ophiuchus right above it, and the reference star on the left of Jupiter as well, and that gives you a pretty good idea of where Ophiuchus is. The sign that is strongly seen, very easily seen at this time. It's a strong sign that is strongly seen, and we got to keep both of these together. These are very powerful, very detailed signs that are very easily seen. You don't need binoculars, you don't even need telescopes. The heavens declare this story along the line, and it can be seen, very strongly seen at this time, which tells us this time right now is also a strong time to be looking up and expecting our redemption. We see the day approaching that he has forewarned us about. So definitely go outside tonight. Look up, be reminded of the promises, be reminded of the time, and be reminded that time is running out as well. These celestial signs will not last long. Every day they get shorter and shorter in duration. So the signs themselves are also part of the celestial clock, telling us that time is ticking down. And what exactly are we looking at? Why are we looking at this particular sign? Why is this so important to us that we say this is a strong sign, strongly seen at this time? Well, it goes back to the beginning of Scripture in Genesis 3:15. I will put enmity between thee, the serpent, and the woman, and between thy seed and her seed. It, Messiah, shall bruise thy head, and thou shalt bruise his heel. This is the prophetic summary of God's work down throughout the ages. How it was started, the promises of a coming Redeemer, how the Redeemer did come, how he was bruised when he died on the cross. He was crushed, he was bruised for our iniquities. But that was not the end of him. It was only a bruising of his heel, in a sense, merely a flesh wound. But one day he will bruise the head of the serpent. It will be a death blow to the serpent. And this is the prophetic summary that we need to keep in mind. We look back at the events of the crucifixion. Also keep in mind that it will be finished. That was only part one of a two-part story. And we see this promise reminded to us in the New Testament, 1 Corinthians 15:23, every man in his own order, Christ the first fruits. Afterward, they are Christ at his coming. Part of looking for Christ to come the second time, it involves looking back. What did he do the first time? What did he start? And what is going to be finished? It's a first part and a two-part. For he must reign till he has put all enemies under his feet. That has not been completely done yet. And this is what we need to keep in mind. The crucifixion set things in motion, yes, and it finished certain things, such as the sacrifice and offering on our behalf once for all. That's done. But there's still a progression of events that will still happen prophetically, and also tied to the promises that Christ made to his servants, his disciples. The last enemy that shall be destroyed is death. We are foretold the progression of events are going to happen. One day he will stand up and start making his enemies his footstool. And if we keep reading that same chapter, the apostle understood that this is connected right with the rapture. The coming of Christ for his wise and faithful servants. The evacuation is going to happen right before Christ starts making his enemies his footstool. These two events are connected. So that's why we studied one, knowing the other. And verse 54, verse 55, the connection of the triumph over his enemies even extends to over death and over the grave and for eternity. We also see these same pictures referenced prophetically, but also in the celestial signs we see now too, with the sting of death. The sign we are looking at right now reminds us of so many things that are only declared in one spot along the line. So this is why there's a strong sign reminding us he is about to make his enemy his footstool. He's going to put down completely the effects of death. It has no hold on the believers in Christ. And pretty soon our hope and expectation is that's going to be demonstrated and we will laugh. O death, where is thy sting? O grave, where is thy victory? We have celestial signs reminding us today about this hope and this expectation. Hebrews 9:24, for Christ is not entered into the holy places made with hands, which are the figures of the true, but into heaven itself, now to appear in the presence of God for us. Nor yet that he should offer himself often, as the high priest entereth into the holy place every year with blood of others. For then must he often have suffered since the foundation of the world. But now, once, in the end of the world, hath he appeared to put away sin by the sacrifice of himself. And as it is appointed unto men once to die, but after this the judgment, so Christ was once offered to bear the sins of many. And unto them that look for him shall he appear the second time without sin unto salvation. When we understand why did Christ come, why did the Redeemer come, what happened when he came, when he was born, when he was offered on our behalf, what were the events that happened the first time he came, and our understanding of that will show us that's the first part. There's still the rest of the story to be continued, a second part. And as we look back at what happened the first time, that will give us a good clue for the pictures and the expectation of the second part pictures that we should be looking for on the celestial clock when we are looking for him the next time. These go together, and understanding the first time will clue us into what he's going to be doing when he comes the second time. And when we keep reading, the apostle summarizes, this man, after he had offered one sacrifice for sins forever, sat down on the right hand of God. He finished his work at Calvary. That's done once for all. But there's a waiting time from henceforth, from that point, expecting till his enemies be made his footstool. He was not doing that at that point. That would come later prophetically. We see that in our prophetic future at our time now. We also see the celestial signs declaring very strongly this picture. He's about to stand up and he's about to start making his enemies his footstool. And as the apostle says, when we see the day approaching, when we see when he's about to do that, let us do certain things. Let us apply ourselves to purifying ourselves even as he is pure. Let's draw nigh to our Redeemer with a true and genuine heart. Let's cast off the works of darkness. Let's cast off and not regard the works of iniquity in our heart. Let's encourage one another into love and to good works, what we should be doing as wise and faithful servants. And so much more as we see, literally, the day approaching. The day of sudden destruction that's coming, the day when he's going to start making his enemies his footstool, with the expectation that the rapture and the gathering is going to be right before that. Again, it goes all the way back to the promise in Genesis, bruising the serpent's head, crushing the serpent's head, but also the pictures and allusions of the heel, bruising the heel of the Messiah, the flesh wound that he received then. There's pictures that are used and referenced throughout prophecy, even down throughout the ages. And because this promise from the Garden of Eden extends all the way through time, the work that Christ is going to be doing down through mankind's history, we also see it in other parts of the Old Testament, which further reinforce the picture that we will see coming. We will see declared in heaven, because it's a picture, it's a literal picture. Isaiah 26:19. Thy dead men shall live, together with my dead body shall they arise. Awake and sing, ye that dwell in dust, for thy dew is as the dew of herbs, and the earth shall cast out the dead. Come, my people, enter thou into thy chambers, and shut thy doors about thee. Hide thyself as it were for a little moment, until the indignation be overpast. For behold, the Lord cometh out of his place, to punish the inhabitants of the earth for their iniquity. The earth also shall disclose her blood, and shall no more cover her slain. In that day the Lord with his sore and great and strong sword shall punish Leviathan the piercing serpent, even Leviathan that crooked serpent, and he shall slay the dragon that is in the sea. In that day sing ye unto her a vineyard of red wine. Notice how even the Old Testament continues this prophetic promise that yes, one day he is going to bruise, he's going to crush the serpent's head, he's going to make him completely his footstool. And it's going to happen on the day of indignation. In that day is the day we see approaching, the day of sun destruction, when he starts making his enemies his footstool. And notice in chapter 27, he gives us a list. These are my enemies. These are the pictorial representations of the enemies. So when we see these pictures that he's referencing, we know, yes, all these pictures are being emphasized, these Old Testament promises from Isaiah, from Genesis, from the beginning of time. We see them being highlighted and rehearsed and pointed to right now, all three of these enemies that he lists. He lists Leviathan, the piercing serpent. That's Serpens, the one that Ophiuchus is wrestling, that constellation. Even Leviathan, that crooked serpent. That's referencing Hydra, which is under Leo. And he shall slay the dragon that is in the sea. That's a reference to Draco, that is in the north. Draco is kind of the main picture of his adversary. Serpents and Hydra are seen as two aspects, two chapters, depicting different prophetic chapters that will happen to his adversary. This is reinforced in Revelation 12:9, and the great dragon was cast out, that old serpent, called the devil and Satan. So Draco, the serpent dragon, that is in the north, but we see these other two aspects declared along the line and pointed to at different points, but also specifically right now with Jupiter right between Ophiuchus' feet, reminding us he's going to be treading down his adversary, which is Leviathan, the piercing serpent that he's wrestling. And he has Scorpius under his feet, showing he's about to tread on his enemies, the very same enemy, the aspect of him that bruised his heel, that stung his heel. We see this promise, from henceforth expecting till his enemies be made his footstool. This is the New Testament understanding. This is the next prophetic chapter that's going to happen. His enemies, which we see well described in the Old Testament passages of Isaiah, one day, that's the next chapter, he's going to be making them his footstool. And it's going to start the tribulation events, the time of judgment, the time of sun destruction, the day of indignation. And it's going to be fulfilling the prophetic promise that goes back to the Garden of Eden, how one day he will bruise, completely crush the head of the serpent. This is a strong sign that is strongly seen at this time right now. You can go outside tonight and look up into the heavens and see it declared right now. This is the time of expectation for these events to happen. They're being highlighted and pointed right with Jupiter along the line from the Revelation 12 sign. It's been one continuous story. Who was born of a virgin? Who was offered on our behalf? And what did he do the first time? We saw Jupiter circle the right leg, reminding us, yes, he was bruised in the heel, but one day he's going to put his foot down and crush the serpent, crush the adversary, crush his enemies, make them his footstool. And we also see so many pictures tied together, specifically mentioned of this depiction, with the scorpion, the serpent biting the heel, the sting of death, all connected to the rapture, to the gathering, to the hiding during that day of indignation, being called to a place of safety before those events start. All these things are wrapped together, so when we see the day approaching, we know the hope and expectation of the gathering and the sparing is right before that. When we see the one, we will see and know the other. And again, it catches our attention in Revelation chapter 9. During the events of the tribulation, there's still an emphasis on scorpions, the demonic forces that come out of the bottomless pit. They're going to have the power of scorpions. They're going to have tails like scorpions. They're going to have stings like scorpions. So this prophetic picture that we're seeing right now, it's not just warning of what he's going to be doing in making his enemies his footstool or bruising completely the head of his enemies. It's also telling us the time. The prophetic events that are still coming after this starts, those are in the days ahead too. We see the celestial heavens reminding us, yes, there is a sting that is still going to be present in the prophetic events coming up. But Christ is coming to call his wise and faithful servants into the chambers, a time of sparing from the sting, from the time of perplexity that is coming on the world. There are so many things wrapped up into the celestial sign we see right now. And if we just look forward a month, we can see these celestial signs won't be declared for long, as Scorpius starts to set lower and lower every single day, more and more. But it does catch our attention that the tail, the stinger, is one of the last things to set. So even a month from now, when most of Scorpius won't be seen an hour after sunset, the sting and Jupiter right by the right foot of Ophiuchus will still be seen. These prophetic events are still going to be signaled into the future. That the events are still expected in the future during that time of indignation. So when we go outside and we look up and we lift up our heads, we know our redemption draweth nigh. We also know the day of sun destruction is drawing nigh too, the time of indignation. And we live accordingly. Knowing these truths, seeing what's declared in the heavens so strongly, we can see it so strongly, so clearly, so visibly. Let us not just see it with our eyes, let's see it with our heart and hands. Let's live as though we see that time is very short. Now, as mentioned, another thing we see is that the signs are getting shorter and shorter. Every single day they're displayed for just a smaller amount of time, a smaller amount of time, smaller amount of time. When we look on this chart around October 1st, which is where we are right now, this is what you'll see right about sunset. But an hour after sunset, that's usually when you could see the sign very well in the southern sky. But an hour after sunset, you'll see all of Scorpius right now and Jupiter and Ophiuchus right above it. You'll see that all well above the horizon, but it won't be there for long. But right now, it is strongly seen. About 2 hours after sunset, you start to see it starting to dip down below the horizon. 3 hours after sunset, you don't see it at all. You'll still see Jupiter getting closer to the right foot of Ophiuchus, but the sign itself with Scorpius is not there for long, although we can see it strongly an hour after sunset. If we go forward to October 7th, you'll still see Scorpius an hour after sunset very well, but again, it's starting to dip down below the horizon and disappear really quickly. 2 weeks from now, October 14th, an hour after sunset, you will barely be able to see it. It's above the horizon, but it's not going to be there for long. 2 hours after sunset, you'll be lucky to see the tail. And again, it'll be gone 3 hours after sunset. And then by October 21st, it's already starting to dip down below the horizon just an hour after sunset. And you generally have to wait about an hour after sunset to see some of these fainter stars in Scorpius's tail, too. So when we look at how long is this sign going to be declared into heaven? About the midst of October is going to be the last we can say that's going to be very strongly seen, where just about anybody can go outside and look toward the south and see it an hour after sunset. After that, the picture starts being obscured more and more. We need to focus on where is this sign strongly seen right now. Over these next 2 weeks, up through the midst of October, this sign is going to be strongly seen, particularly where we are right now is where it's strongest and longest. So definitely we have a lot telling us that time is very short, and this time where we are right now is a high time of expectation. Let's look on the timeline and review some interesting things we've seen with Jupiter along its path since the Revelation 12 sign. That's something we have to keep in mind constantly. Where Jupiter is now is a continuation of the story from the Revelation 12 sign, the rehearsal of the birth of Messiah. It's one long story. Jupiter, where it is now, is just further along that line, telling that same story. So if we look on Stellarium back to about 2018, we had seen Jupiter come in through Libra, which reminded us how Christ was offered once to be a sacrifice, and then we also saw it come into Scorpius, the head of it, travel along the body, come to the right leg of Ophiuchus, and then continue to where it is now. So let's just rehearse some of that. Back in October of 2018, Jupiter was in Libra, so let's just speed things up a bit and let's watch Jupiter's path and point out a few interesting things that we need to keep in mind as Jupiter is moving along. It came into the head of Scorpius. We watched that there, reminded us of how the Messiah did bruise the serpent's head at that time. And then it brought our attention to the right foot of Ophiuchus. Ophiuchus is facing us, facing the viewer, so that is his right foot. His left foot is considered near the head of Scorpius. So we saw Jupiter bring attention to the right foot of Ophiuchus, which reminded us that, yes, the scorpion, the adversary, did bruise Messiah's heel. There was a bruising, the appearance of putting him to death, a very brutal death on the cross. We were reminded of that first part, but we're also told that this is a second part. He is going to bruise the serpent's head. He's going to completely crush and kill the serpent one day too, when he makes his enemies his footstool, and that's the next prophetic chapter. So we saw how Jupiter brought attention to this right foot, but notice as it was traveling along, it did not go very far past this point. Let me zoom in a little bit here. And just notice something. It stood still in about this portion, almost reaching the stinger, but it did not come close to the stinger. It tasted of the sting of it, but as you can see as we go forward in time, let me speed it up a little bit more, it never got to where it is distinctly in line with the stinger. This catches our attention because we have recently seen Jupiter come to a standstill, reminding us of that, and now it's coming back, reminding us of the second part. He's going to be making his enemies his footstool, and in the days ahead, we're going to see it pass over that stinger, come in line with that. Let's back up, and where will it do that? Approximately the 5th, 6th, 7th, and 8th of November. Jupiter is going to be in line with the stinger, which it did not do when it came to the foot the first time. So this needs to catch our attention. There's a deliberate choreography that's reminding us, yes, his heel was bruised once, but there's also going to be an application with the stinger a second time that's distinctly different from the first time. And we need to keep that in mind because in the prophetic next chapter, when he does make his enemies his footstool, Revelation distinctly talks about the time of scorpions and stings. So the sting portion is expected to be prophetically in the future as part of the next chapter. So that catches our attention when we look at the celestial clock, and when Jupiter, which has been telling the story so far, particularly about the foot, the bruising, and how he's going to make his enemies his footstool, Jupiter also reaching a point in line with the stinger, reminding us of that portion which is already foretold in the book of Revelation. But we also see that around November 8th, Jupiter's outside the right foot. This is the right foot here, these stars, the right foot of Ophiuchus. So Jupiter is no longer between the feet at that portion. So that means a portrayal of the feet making his enemies his footstool is very weak at that point because Jupiter's not between the feet. The other left foot is about in this area here, kind of this triangle where Venus is right now. That's kind of the left foot right there. If we back up a few days to about the beginning of November, that's when Jupiter's going to be at the heel, the right heel of Ophiuchus. But at that point, Jupiter's outside the foot. So up until that point, Jupiter is at the right foot still. A good, strong reminder of making him his footstool. But by the beginning of November, that picture is very weak, and pretty much after that, it's over. But then again, that brings us to an important reminder of what's going to be in the days ahead with the sting of scorpions as well, foretold in the future. So we see multiple prophetic references with this sign while Jupiter is in Scorpius, reminding us of that. So there's multiple things we're watching, not just where we are now, expecting the start of him making his enemies his footstool. And that brings us where we are right now. We are about right here. That's where Jupiter is approaching the right foot, but it's still in between the left feet. Right and left feet, still between the feet there. Strong portrayal, seen well above the horizon, reminding us that the king is going to be making his enemies his footstool. As we go forward a few days, we can see by the middle of the month where the sign's still going to be seen in the evening very well, up through the middle of the month, and then start tapering off after that as it sets closer and closer in the horizon. Right around that time when the scene and the picture starts getting harder and harder to see, and you won't be able to see the whole picture all at once, that's when Jupiter's at the foot and it's starting to leave the foot. So we see multiple things coming together, where the clock is pointing on the celestial clock, and then also what is seen when you go out, look up, and lift up your heads as well. So this is what we need to keep in mind. Jupiter is right in the feet right now. You can still see the whole of Scorpius in the evening sky and still be able to see that Jupiter is in between the feet, but it's approaching the right foot, and very, very soon is going to be leaving that portion of the story and also highlighting another significant part of the prophetic future for the days ahead as well. So a lot telling us right now to look up and lift up our heads, for our redemption draweth nigh. We will see the day approaching, and as we are even told at the rapture, part of the cry is, O death, where is thy sting? We will see the day approaching, and it appears the expectation is that we will not see the sting of death. And so we should have a great expectation that we're not even going to reach when the clock is pointing to the sting that the adversary has. Now I've upgraded the timeline to include this information so you can look at it and see how long is the sign going to be declared every single day, and see that get shorter and shorter, and also see that there's certain times of the month, toward the end of this month of October, it's not really going to be seen. It's going to be starting to be obscured and almost not really seen at all by the end of this month. But it's going to be strongly seen up and through about the middle of the month. Now when we zoom in a little bit, we can see we're over here, right within a time of expected departures, even approaching the days of Noah and Lot that recall when the flood started. A lot telling us the time is very short. Christ is coming while life is going on like normal. That's what Christ meant by the days of Noah and Lot. That's when judgment is coming. Only those who are watching and know it's coming and see it approaching were living in light of it. Now let us do the same thing too. We know he's coming during the days of Noah and Lot. We also see the signs declaring that the day is approaching, the day of some destruction. Just like Noah's case, he knew judgment was coming and he lived accordingly. He went forward in faith. Let us do the same. Right now, where we are, the sign is well seen. Over the next 2 weeks, it's going to be very well seen, very strongly seen, very easily seen. But toward the end of the month, it's going to be hardly seen, not seen at all. So again, this emphasizes the sign is strongly seen right now. That means our expectation and our hope is strong now too. But we also see at the beginning of November, pretty much, Jupiter is going to be leaving the feet of Ophiuchus. So we start drastically losing the emphasis on treading on the adversaries, making them his footstool. So as long as Jupiter is between the feet and emphasizing the feet, we can consider that it's strongly emphasizing that part of the story. But once it gets outside of that, it gets real iffy, and particularly at a time when you can't even hardly see the sign, too. And then just a few days after that, Jupiter is going to be in line with the stinger. Seems to be pointing to a time of stinging, what's expected in the days of indignation, which it did not do when it recently passed that area before. So these are unique signs ticking on the celestial clock. We need to take all this into consideration, and then also by the end of November, the Scorpion story is essentially over because Jupiter is going to be out of Scorpius. You're not even going to be able to see Scorpius. So there's a lot that tells us, while it's seen where we are right now, this is the time we should be expecting our Redeemer. So much telling us that the day of indignation and the prophetic events with the Scorpion and the stingers of the Scorpion, all this is expected any day now. Right now we have a sign that is strongly seen, and our hope is strong as we see the day approaching because we can see the sign right now. So I highly encourage you, go outside tonight, look up, lift up your heads, remind yourself of the promises, review the Bible verses that go with why we are looking at this picture particularly, and all the pictures that are coming together right here. There's so much woven into this one strong sign that is strongly seen right now. We are called to be the wise and faithful servants. And just like the wise men who saw the signs, they acted on the signs that they strongly saw. And when they saw the signs, it strongly affected their hope and their expectation, and they went out to meet the King, to worship the King. Likewise, when we understand how Christ came the first time, we are looking for him to appear the second time. Just like the wise men, we see these strong signs, we rise up, we go forward, out to meet our King, and we worship him with our life as a demonstration of our love for him. And this is what we should be doing, and so much the more as we see the day approaching. We're at a time of departure. We have the reminders of how people departed after the Feast of Tabernacles. We've also recently seen the 2-year anniversary of the Revelation 12 sign, which reminded us when the wise men did come to Jerusalem. They came about 1.5 years after Messiah's birth. But Herod made a decree related to 2 years, just to cover all his bases. He was very paranoid. But the wise men departed right before Herod put out the decree. They were warned in a dream, so they left and departed another way. So did Mary and Joseph and the young child. There were 2 departures just prior to that 2-year mark, but because of the distance they were traveling, particularly the wise men, their travels and their commute would extend for quite some time after the 2-year mark. And this is what we're seeing right now too. Just like after the Feast of Tabernacles, they knew it would take about 2 weeks for some of those Jews to get back home, particularly the ones who lived near the banks of the Euphrates River. Well, we know the wise men came from the east, and it's highly speculated they came from Persia. So if they were heading back home, it would take them about 2 weeks to get back home. And so when we see the 2-year anniversary, and we just consider that time of departure for the wise men alone, and then add that travel time to it, that brings us right to the window where we are right now. Just like the wise men were looking forward to get back home to their permanent home, just like the travelers during the Feast of Tabernacles, they were traveling, waiting to get back home to their permanent home. Likewise, believers in Christ, we're looking for the dissolving of our temporary tabernacles, and we are looking forward to our eternal home. This is a time of expected departures right now. We see the day approaching. So many things telling us the day is approaching. There's been so many calls of peace and safety. We already know that sudden destruction is coming. That day of indignation. Which means when we have the celestial signs going on up above, the geopolitical news telling us the same thing, and we also see events in our own lives. We have so many things telling us that time is very short. Our departure is expected any moment now. And again, it's caught my attention how, again, on a ground level, seeing the Lord work in our life with the medical missions here at the Brook Cherith, so many things are reinforcing, yes, time is very short. I'm not surprised at all to see how the Lord is working in preparation for a prophetic time, at a prophetic time. They go together. In a way, it's almost expected that this should be happening because this is a time that He's been telling us this is going to be needed in. That prophetic time of indignation, that time of sudden destruction that's coming, He will still be offering His love, grace, and mercy during that time, and we see the preparations wrapping up, finalizing, and winding down so many things that He has gotten ready recently for this time, in expectation for the time that He's already showing us. This is the time. We should not be surprised to see how He is working at this time. Definitely make sure you check out our community tab on our channel. You might need to check your YouTube subscriptions to make sure you're getting creator posts. But every now and then I post in the community because the Lord has had me very busy with the clinic, getting things ready there. That's one of the reasons why we haven't been making a lot of videos there. So if you haven't been checking out our community posts lately, definitely review what the Lord has been doing over just the past month. And when we do, it's been incredible to see how He has been preparing the medical clinic here, making sure it's all stocked up, making sure a lot of things are finished, bringing together a lot of provision, liberty, wisdom, strength to make so much accomplished just within the past month. So much telling us that He's readying this place for the days that are coming. A demonstration and testimony of His love, grace, and mercy in the days ahead. And when we see this sign, when we see what the Lord is doing on a ground level, that excites us. When we see what He's doing down here, when we see up in the heavens what He's declaring, that yes, this is a time when He's going to be standing up and starting to make His enemies His footstool. When He's going to be gathering His wise and faithful servants into the secret chamber, a place of safety just before that time of indignation, that time of judgment, just like the days of Noah. We have all these promises. We see so many preparations, so many things telling us that our departure is nigh at hand. Let us be the wise and faithful servants going forward, just like the wise men, acting on what we see. So much telling us that time is very, very short. We have strong signs that are strongly seen. And this strongly reinforces our hope and expectation at this time that our Redeemer, our Savior, our beloved, our Bridegroom is about to pick up His purchased possession. Definitely check out the description box for links to our PDF as you see the day approaching. A great summary and concise description of these verses. Great time to review all the pictures that are coming together. Great for sharing with other people. Why are we looking at the signs? Why are we going out in the evening and looking toward the south? Well, it's because we see these scriptural pictures that we are foretold about, that we will see the day approaching. So definitely print that out, share with others. We have other resources, Understanding God's Celestial Clock. How do we know the time that heaven's declared? What have we seen prior to the Revelation 12 sign? After Revelation 12 sign, what are the different constellation pictures that we've seen recently as well? A great review of Understanding Jupiter's Path has been telling one continuous story since before the Revelation 12 sign too. There's so much that the Lord has brought us to, bringing us to this point. Also check out and especially study the books Be Ye Ready and Running for the Prize. The Lord gave His disciples and His servants instructions of be ye ready when He returns. When you know the day is approaching, He wants us to be watching. He wants us to be sober. He wants us to be vigilant. He wants us to be ready, living as though our Lord is about to return. As we have the hope of seeing Him face to face very soon, let us purify ourselves even as He is pure, looking unto our Lord and drawing nigh with a true and genuine heart, a heart that is acceptable in His sight. This is a repeated exhortation that the apostle gave. As we see the day approaching, let us do what we're supposed to do. Let us live like we're supposed to do. And let's do it so much the more, encouraging each other, provoking one another unto love and to good works. So much the more as we see these strong signs telling us the day is approaching. Let's look up, not just with our eyes, but with our heart, with our ears, and with our hands. We have heard so many trumpet calls telling us the bridegroom cometh. Go ye out to meet Him. That is a complete summary of what we are to do. Let's rise up. Let's go out to meet Him. Let's be shining bright. But let's go out to meet Him. Let's draw nigh to our Redeemer when we know He's coming. We hear the trumpet calls. We have not seen Him yet, but we hear the trumpet calls telling us He's just over the hill and He's coming for His bride. Let's rise up and let's act on these declarations. What is declared that the bridegroom cometh? Let's rise up. Let's trim our lamps. Let's shine bright. And together, let's go out to meet Him, loving Him and serving Him first and highest above all else. Maranatha.